What do you do when your crimes are so monstrous that even the earth itself refuses to hide them? From the skies, you can still trace their outline: fields that were once killing grounds, forests that conceal shallow graves, rivers that carried the ashes of the dead. By 1942, as Nazi Germany's dream of conquest began to crumble, its leaders faced a terrifying truth. They had murdered millions, and the evidence was everywhere. So, in their desperation, they created a new operation, one meant to burn the very memory of the Holocaust from existence. And the man chosen to lead it was no stranger to slaughter. His name was Paul Blobel, an SS officer, an architect turned executioner, and the man who tried to erase the Holocaust itself. This is the story of how he tried to destroy history, and how history destroyed him. Paul Blobel was not born a monster. He was born in Potsdam, Germany, in 1894 to a Protestant family. Like many men of his time, he was shaped by fighting in the First World War. He served in an artillery unit, was a good soldier, and earned the high honor of the Iron Cross, First Class. After the war ended, he came back to a defeated and messy Germany. Blobel tried to live a normal life, studying architecture and working for himself starting in 1924. But the good times in Germany soon fell apart. The Great Depression left him and millions of others without jobs. In this time of national shame and personal struggle, Blobel found a new path. In 1931, he joined the Nazi Party and later the SS. He accepted their ideas, which promised to make Germany strong again and gave someone to blame for all of Germany's problems. He was no longer just an unemployed architect, he was part of a movement. His hard work was noticed. In 1934, he was hired by the SD, the powerful spy agency of the SS, and began to rise in the party, eventually leading the SD office in Düsseldorf. Blobel's change from a war hero and architect to an important official in a police state was complete. He was an organizer who saw his job as carrying out the government's orders. This organized way of doing things would soon be used for a horror never seen before. When Germany invaded the Soviet Union in June 1941, the Nazis started a new type of war. 4 special units called Einsatzgruppen, or task forces, followed the regular army. These were not regular soldiers. They were killing groups that moved from place to place, made up of men from the SS, the SD, and the police. Their official job was to get rid of political enemies, but their real, secret order, given by the highest leaders, was to kill all the Jewish people of Eastern Europe. This was the Holocaust by bullets, a wave of mass shootings that killed over 1.5 million people. Paul Blobel, now an SS Standartenführer, equal to a full colonel, was given command of Sonderkommando 4A, part of Einsatzgruppe C. This group was sent to Ukraine. From the beginning, Blobel's unit was cruel and effective. In towns like Lutsk and Zhytomyr, his unit, often with help from local people and German soldiers, rounded up and killed thousands of Jewish men, women, and children. In Zhytomyr, Blobel organized the murder of about 3,000 Jews in August 1941. One of Blobel's men later talked about a killing of children at Bila Tserkva. An SS officer said after the war, "The Ukrainians were standing around trembling. The children were taken down from the tractor. They were lined up along the top of the grave and shot so that they fell into it. The wailing was indescribable. Blobel was there, watching over everything. He was known for drinking a lot, a habit that seemed to get worse as the killings he ordered got bigger. But Blobel's organized way of killing didn't only use bullets. In late 1941, a new killing tool appeared, the gas vans. These were trucks sealed completely shut. Victims were packed in the back, and carbon monoxide from the engine's exhaust was piped inside, causing a slow and painful death. This was the man Paul Blobel had become, an organizer of mass death, a planner of genocide. He was responsible for the murder of tens of thousands, and his most evil act was still to come. It would happen in a deep ravine just outside of Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, a place whose name would become a permanent scar on the world's conscience, Babi Yar. In late September 1941, the German 6th Army captured Kiev, the capital of Soviet Ukraine. Days later, massive explosions rocked the city center. Mines planted by the retreating Red Army detonated, destroying German headquarters and killing German soldiers. For the Nazi command, this was the perfect pretext. They publicly blamed the city's Jewish population and made the decision to annihilate every Jew in Kiev. The task fell to Paul Blobel and his Sonderkommando 4A. On September 28th, notices posted throughout the city ordered all Jews to assemble the next morning near the Lukianivka cemetery. They were told to bring documents, money, and warm clothing under the pretense of resettlement. Fearing deportation but not suspecting the horrific truth, tens of thousands obeyed. What awaited them was a meticulously organized production line of murder. At the assembly point, they were forced to hand over their valuables and then strip completely naked. Piles of clothing grew into small mountains as Ukrainian auxiliary police and SS soldiers brutally herded the terrified people forward. The final destination was the edge of Babi Yar, a natural ravine. Victims were led in small groups to the precipice where the first layers of the dead already lay. They were forced to lie face down on the bodies of their neighbors and family members before being shot in the back of the neck by men from Blobel's unit and German police battalions. The sound of machine guns was a continuous, deafening roar. A truck driver who witnessed the event later described the scene. The marksman would walk across the bodies of the executed Jews to the next Jew, who had meanwhile lain down, and shoot him. The wounded were left to die among the dead, and German soldiers periodically collapsed the sandy walls of the ravine to bury the living and the dead together under thick layers of earth. Over just 2 days, September 29th and 30th, 1941, Blobel's unit and its support forces murdered 33,771 Jewish men, women, and children. This figure comes directly from the Einsatzgruppe's own chillingly bureaucratic report. At that point, Babi Yar was the largest single massacre of the Holocaust. Paul Blobel was the chief architect of this horror, personally overseeing the operation's deadly efficiency. But the psychological toll of orchestrating such carnage, combined with his chronic alcoholism, began to wear on him. On January 13, 1942, he was officially dismissed from his command for health issues. For most officers, this would have been the end of their frontline career. But the Nazi leadership had a different plan for Paul Blobel. His intimate knowledge of mass murder made him uniquely qualified for a new, even more secret task. The war was turning, and the prospect of defeat, once unthinkable, was now a growing possibility. And with that came a terrifying problem for the Reich: the evidence. By the spring of 1942, the Nazi leaders were facing a major crisis. The war in the Soviet Union had slowed down, and the United States had joined the fight. With this came a dark worry. The mass killings had left a horrible trail of proof. Thousands of mass graves all over Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltic states. These were not secrets. The killings had often happened in the open, and news of the terrible acts was starting to reach the Allied countries. The Nazi government, which wanted to control the story, knew the danger this physical evidence presented. Heinrich Himmler, the planner of the final solution, saw that these graves were a problem waiting to happen. The crimes were supposed to be undocumented, and the mass graves were an obvious problem. There was also a more disgusting issue. In many places, the shallow graves would swell and break open in the summer heat, poisoning the groundwater and the air. The dead, it seemed, would not stay buried. The order came from the top of the SS. Reinhard Heydrich first gave Paul Blobel the job in March 1942. After Heydrich was killed, the head of the Gestapo, Heinrich Müller, gave the final order. The order was given only by speaking and was given a code name from its file number, Sonderaktion 1005. Its goal was simple and awful: find every mass grave in the East, dig up the bodies, and destroy them so completely that no sign would ever be found. It was a plan to erase the Holocaust from history after it happened. Blobel, the heavy-drinking killer who was fired for being unstable, was now the chosen man for this job. He treated the problem with the cold, uncaring way of thinking of an architect. He couldn't just burn the bodies in the pits. That would not be a good way to do it. He needed to test different methods. His first test site was the Chełmno extermination camp. In June 1942, he tried using bombs made to start fires, but this set the nearby forests on fire. Explosives just blew the bodies apart. Finally, he came up with what was called the Blobel pyre. A huge grill was built over the dug-up grave using railway tracks on concrete blocks. Layers of bodies and wood were stacked high, covered in gasoline and set on fire. These huge fires could burn for days, burning the bodies almost completely. After the fires went out, any leftover bone pieces were crushed into powder in special bone-crushing machines. This human ash was then spread around or buried again, and the ground was smoothed over and often planted with trees to hide everything. The final, cruel part of Blobel's plan was about the workers. The SS men of Sonderaktion 1005 were not going to do this horrible work themselves. Instead, prisoners, nearly all of them Jewish, were forced to do it. They were called Leichenkommandos, or corpse commandos. Chained to stop them from escaping, these prisoners had to dig into the rotting graves, pull the decaying bodies of their own people onto the fires, and use the bone-grinding machines. They did all this knowing that once their work was finished, they would also be killed and burned. With his method ready, Paul Blobel began to send his Sonderkommando 1005 units across the huge lands of death he had helped create. The machine of erasure was about to start its awful work. The use of Sonderaktion 1005 was a large operation that moved around. Under Paul Blobel's main command, special units spread out across Eastern Europe, rushing before the Soviet army arrived. In Ukraine, he made Sonderkommando 1005A and 1005B. Another unit worked near Minsk. Each group had a few SD officers, dozens of German police guards, and the forced workers of the Corps Commando. The stories of the few who survived give a look into this darkness. Leon Wells, a prisoner forced into the Death Brigade at the Yanovska camp, described the horrible daily work. Chained at the ankles, the prisoners were marched to killing sites to do a terrible three-part job. The diggers opened the mass graves, letting out a very strong, bad smell. The haulers pulled the tangled, rotting bodies out and checked their mouths for gold teeth. Finally, the burners stacked the bodies on the fires, watched the fires, and used the bone-crushing machines that turned the last physical parts of thousands of people into nameless dust. Any prisoner who was too slow or broke down was shot right away and thrown onto the fire. The operation moved with a serious goal. In Poland and the Baltic states, graves were opened and burned. Near Riga, Blobel himself watched. At Mali Trostinek near Minsk, his units dug up and burned tens of thousands of bodies. The operation covered sites in Berdichev, Dnepropetrovsk, and many other places. But no place was more important as a symbol than Babi Yar. In August 1943, Sonderkommando 1005A went back to the ravine outside Kiev. Paul Blobel, the man who ordered the massacre there less than 2 years earlier, now came back to order the burning. In a legal statement at Nuremberg, Blobel described what he saw in a cold, emotionless way. During my visit in August, I myself observed the burning of bodies in a mass grave near Kiev. After the top had been removed, the bodies were covered with inflammable material and ignited. It took about 2 days until the grave burned down to the bottom. After that, the grave was filled in and the traces practically obliterated. He did not mention the 327 prisoners forced to do the work. They worked for over 6 weeks, chained and watched by machine guns, burning what historians think were at least 70,000 bodies from the different massacres at the site. The prisoners knew what would happen to them. On the night of September 29, 1943, the second anniversary of the massacre, they made a desperate fight to escape. Most were killed, but a small group of about 15 to 20 people managed to escape into the night. Their survival was a miracle, and their stories provided one of the only first-hand accounts of Sonderaktion 1005. From the summer of 1942 through mid-1944, Sonderaktion 1005 worked without stopping, disrespecting the dead in Belzec, Sobibor, and Treblinka, and moving through Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltic states. It was an effort across the whole continent to rewrite history by burning it. But history is not so easily erased. Blobel did not realize how strongly people remember things and how fast the Soviet army was moving. Through late 1943 and 1944, the Eastern Front fell apart for the German army. The unstoppable advance of the Soviet Red Army became a force that could not be stopped, making Blobel's secret mission fail. They simply ran out of time. In his Nuremberg statement, Blobel admitted the failure, saying it was not possible to destroy the graves farther south and east because the front line was advancing. Soviet spy planes flew over areas where the huge fires still burned. Advancing soldiers took over killing sites, finding graves that were only partly dug up, abandoned bone-crushing machines, and the black burned remains of the fires. The Soviet Extraordinary State Commission started to document the terrible acts, talking to local witnesses and, importantly, the few survivors of the Sonderkommando revolts. They dug up bodies themselves at sites like Babi Yar, finding that even with Blobel's best efforts, the evidence was not almost completely wiped out. The earth itself remembered. As the German war effort fell apart, the Sonderaktion 1005 units were broken up. Paul Blobel himself was caught by Allied soldiers. The planner of murder and master of erasure was now a prisoner. He was put on trial in Nuremberg, not in the famous international trial, but as one of the main people on trial in the US military's Einsatzgruppen trial. 24 former commanders of the mobile killing squads faced charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity. The trial started on September 29, 1947, 6 years to the day after he started the Babi Yar massacre. Paul Blobel pleaded not guilty. His defense was a mix of denial and claiming he was just following orders. While the prosecution charged him with being responsible for at least 60,000 deaths, Blobel claimed he had killed only 10,000 to 15,000 people, as if that disgusting number could prove he was not guilty. But the evidence was very strong. The prosecution showed the Nazis' own detailed reports, Blobel's own cold statement describing Action 1005, and the stories of survivors. His cold official manner while facing such terrible charges decided what would happen to him. The court found him guilty on all 3 charges. On April 10, 1948, the sentence was given: death by hanging. Blobel spent the next 3 years on death row at Landsberg prison. In the early morning of June 7, 1951, Paul Blobel was led to be hanged. The architect who designed systems of mass murder and the agent who tried to burn the memory of his crimes from the world was executed. Paul Blobel's final job, Sonderaktion 1005, was the Nazi government's final proof that they knew they were guilty. It was a confession made with fire and ash, a desperate try to hide a crime so big it was too big to hide. Having murdered millions, their final act was to try to kill the truth itself. But they failed. They failed because of the small number of chained prisoners who fought back at Babi Yar and escaped to tell their story. They failed because advancing armies found the half-erased evidence of their crimes. And they failed because the evidence they created, in their own reports, their own statements, and the damaged land of Eastern Europe, was too huge to be destroyed. The ashes that Blobel's commandos spread could not stop the story of the dead from being told. The story of Paul Blobel is a scary example of how mass murder works, showing how normal goals and being good at paperwork can join together to create evil that is hard to imagine. It is also a strong reminder that history has a way of not going away, even if you try to bury it or burn it. The attempt to erase the Holocaust was its last crime, which failed. The evidence survived, and in the end, justice, even if it wasn't complete, had the final say.